Server from 17 once again. This is my Darksiders 2 Apocalyptic difficulty video walkthrough. We're moving through the Eternal Throne so we can get to the City of the Dead. We're talking to this dude, and we're probably going to be fast travelling. And Darksiders at this point, we're 30 odd videos deep. It's getting to the point where there isn't really much to say, because I don't think this game is all that challenging, and I don't think this game is all that good, in my opinion. And I tried to really like it, but it falls short on so many levels that it's a good game that could have been much better. It could have been a great game, and I find that really sad. And every time I do one of these commentaries, I'm reminded of how excited I was for the game and how disappointed I was at the game. And I'm going to try not to dwell too much on that, because it's easy to talk about that stuff. And I don't want to change anyone else's opinion. But this is us getting the experience and the gold for killing Basilius, or for getting Basilius, you know, doing the trial, so on, so forth. This is us warping to the City of the Dead. I've cut out all the map stuff. And we're now going to be using the ability known as the Soul Splitter. Or Soul Splitter, because for some reason I just stressed that word really badly, like some drunk linguist. And what this is, effectively, is you split yourself into two parts, and you also have a free door wedge. So it's an interesting mechanic that they use well, but unfortunately they do rely on it a little bit too much for my taste, so you end up doing very similar puzzles in a few different areas, but it's kind of cool at first and kind of interesting. It'll definitely make you think outside of the box, as I'm trying to drag things for some reason. There we go, drag that one instead. But a lot of the puzzles are quite simple, but you'll kick yourself when you miss them the first few times. And I think that they're a sign of good puzzle making, because the puzzle itself should be obvious, it should be simple, but it should be subtle enough that getting to that conclusion takes you, you know, a couple of minutes. And that's kind of the point of it. It's a temporary roadblock in your progress. And I do think the puzzles on this game are a lot more challenging than they were in Darksiders 1. I don't think they're at a point where you're going to get super stuck, frustrated and pissed off. Yeah, the only place I got even remotely like that was in the place we've just done the Psycameron, and that was just because I don't know, that was one of those places of the games where I don't think the signposting is as obvious as it perhaps should be, and you really are reliant on figuring it out, and some people love that. I don't mind it at all, but in that case, I found myself getting lost in that place, and it took longer than it should have. These crabby, stupid enemy guys, the best way to kill them is to spam grab. Not only are you invulnerable during the grab, but it's more fun because you never hit them when you want to. As you can see, I'm doing a terrible job of hitting them. The only problem with the spamming grab technique is it introduces you to how bad the detection of the grab is in the game. So you'll press B several times before you grab anything, and it almost makes you wonder, did these people play God of War? Did these people you know, see how the fidelity of the controls in God of War was great, and then they made this combat system very reminiscent of it, but almost naively reminiscent, so much so that it's nowhere near as the same quality, which is a shame, because this game has fantastic aesthetic, fantastic world, it has quite a lot of budget behind it, and it was coming from a company that, I don't know, do we blame the financial situation that THQ were in for this game's shortcomings, or do we blame it on the fact that it was an over-ambitious attempt to do something massive? Because I'm eager to see what people think. By the way, this fight here, two skeletons that, you know, have got poise for days, that will try and combo you. You can evade them and then counterpunch them, but as you can see, I'm getting tagged quite a lot, so I'm probably just going to start using this, which is the untouchable move, which helps me get crits, and then I'm going to be using the weapon that I've got equipped as my sub-weapon, which is the Echidna, the Gauntlets, which siphon health from your opponent. And they're super useful, super effective. Somebody left a comment as well, when it comes to these undead generals, if you're using a heavy weapon and you do a charge attack, apparently it knocks his shield away. So, quicker way to kill these guys is to swap out to a heavier weapon, deal some, you know, quick stun damage with your heavy, and then beat them up a little bit. It'll be much quicker than what I'm going to show you, because I just dodge and then spam, and it takes forever. But I'm really curious to what people think about the length of this game. The length and the pacing. And I say this because Darksiders 1 was a very controlled and brief journey through a new land, through a new IP. And I think it was the right length. I think it had enough dungeons. Actually, I tell a lie. I think the dungeon just before the last boss, the one with Azrael, where you're using the portal gun, I think that one was far too close to the one before it, and it made it feel a bit of the dungeon fatigue that I felt through this game, where I think there were maybe 1 or 2 dungeons heavy towards the end of that game, when it kind of just threw you into dungeon after dungeon, and I don't like that, because I think it's bad pacing. But that aside, I think it did a lot of things. It took you to a lot of environments, a lot of different places. It gave you a lot of skills, and you used them in each dungeon. It was very Zelda, very formulaic, and it worked. This game, you pretty much do more dungeons than the first game in the first area of this sequel. Like, you do 4 dungeons before you know how to do some of the moves. Like, does anybody else think there's something wrong with that? And then when you go to a completely different place, which is the Land of the Dead, which is essentially the same place you were in before, but now it's much greyer. And, you know, they've replaced the fauna and the water with skulls and sand and dust and dirt. But you can't get away from the fact that essentially you're just going dungeon to dungeon to dungeon. And then when you go to the next place, after you've done several more dungeons, you're in the land of the angels, you're in heaven, purgatory and everything or whatever. And it looks different, it looks great, and you run forward and you're immediately put in another dungeon. I don't know, I didn't expect them to go so heavy in that direction. And I don't think that the dungeons are badly designed. I just think that sometimes, you know, when you're in an action-adventure RPG game, sometimes you need to be able to do the role-playing stuff. Sometimes you need a little bit more in between, a little bit more of a buffer between the next dungeon, because the dungeons then begin to feel like fluff, and they feel like something that could have been trimmed to make the experience more fluid and more diverse, and I think that's a definite shame. Because instead of, you know, looking at the quality of the puzzle design and the interesting nature of what you're doing, you get to that point where all you can think about is, I'm in another fucking dungeon doing the same things I was doing in the last one. And I think that can undermine a lot of the quality of the game. But I don't know, a lot of people that I talk about this game, they seem to love it, they seem to think it's flawless and perfect, and I suppose that they're the target demographic, but I think this game is far from perfect. But compared to the ocean of shit that does get released, it's significantly better, and it's better than most games you can buy. So just because I'm coming off very critical and quite negative towards this game does not mean it's a bad game by any measures. It just means that I had extremely high expectations for it. And I blame the ending. I blame that epic ending that they didn't follow on in any facility whatsoever. And I don't know, I don't think it's as serious as, you know, Metal Gear Solid 2, where you played the demo and that was all the Snake you got in the main game, which is so ballsy when you think about it. But at the same time, it's a similar ploy. Like, you buy this game on the grounds that you're gonna continue that amazing moment from the last game. You've been waiting a couple of years to see how that pans out, and instead it's like, 2 weeks before that fantastic moment you wanted to play, War's brother Death was doing this. Would you like to know more? And everyone's like, no, we want to know what's happening with War. It's like, okay, here are several chapters of Death. It just doesn't seem to follow on at all. And I can understand why they did it. I think that's quite simple. They're trying to build a franchise. They're trying to build this universe. They're building fiction. They're building backstory. They're giving things purpose, and they're building towards a focal point, towards a fulcrum. The only problem is THQ's just gone under, and it's probably going to get bought out by Ubisoft or somebody like that. The creative director, and the guy who designed what war looks like and a lot of the aesthetic of this game has dropped off the project for whatever creative difference reasons. I'm not too sure. He didn't make a statement saying that there was any problems. He was just moving on. So the next Darksiders, and I say the next Darksiders very loosely because there may not be another one, is probably going to be a very different game. And I don't know if that's going to be for the better. But one thing I do know is the easy option is immediately following on the story from War in the next game, just because it's the Occam's razor of that situation. It's the simplest truth that allows you to get the most hype for your game, because you can kind of go, people in Darksiders 2 expected to continue the story of War, but now in Darksiders 3 you're gonna find out what the fuck went down. And it's much easier to hook people with the promise of what they wanted in this game. And I think that's an interesting proposition, but I don't think there's going to be another Darksiders for a while, unless THQ gets immediately funded, or unless Vigil Games gets bought by somebody else. I'm not too sure what the legal situation is for all that stuff. But it's still interesting, and I'm curious to see what people think. I'm not asking you to assess the quality of the game or your personal opinion of the game. I'm asking for an objective view on what you think's happening with this franchise. But it is an interesting situation, and it's a series that I think has got a lot of legs and could build to be something great. They just need to refine it. They need to hold back going too big and make a much more focused adventure. And I think, is it Rocksteady Studios, the people that did the Batman series, Arkham Asylum and Arkham City? I think they fell into the same pitfall as well. They wanted to get all ambitious because they had the bigger budget coming off the massive success of the first one. They wanted to continue to build. They didn't want to play it safe, and I completely admire them for doing that, but at the same time I think they stretched themselves too thin. And my main reason for that is they created a sandbox that didn't have all that much to do in it, and if you didn't indulge in the side missions you could beat the game in about 3 hours, and that is really unfortunate. They also turned the collectibles into a chore, which I thought the collectibles on the first Arkham City were really fun. I thought they made sense, they were part of the game, they were well integrated, but on the second one there were so fucking many of them, it just got to the point where, you know, you could have been paid to do it. At that point it was a job. It was employment, and, you know, it's just not fun at that point. But we're currently a few days away from Devil May Cry coming out. I'm interested to see how well this guy does, because I don't know how hard the game is going to be, and the backlash that this game is getting is completely unwarranted. It's just a bunch of old women that are set in their ways, that refuse change and sit there pointing their stick at pigeons. And there's no need for it, because, you know, nothing stays the same, everything changes, and just because it's new and different doesn't mean it's bad, and they just can't seem to get away from that, and I don't understand it at all. Especially when Capcom themselves went to another developer, and the developer started making a game, and then the people that were there overseeing basically said, no, do not make it like this, make it like we could not make it. So why the hell are everybody on Team Ninja's ass when Capcom expressly said, we want you to make a game we could not make? And all the people there, the combat analysis, all those guys from Capcom that have been overseeing the project to make sure that the combat feels punchy, to make sure that it's a representative product of the quality that they want, they've all given it a green light and they're all happy with it. And don't the people who designed the games that you all love, don't you think they know a little something about the combat in them? So for them to give it the approval and to say that they think it's good means a little bit more than random fucking internet dudes that have spent far too much overanalyzing individual frames and timings. Because, I'm sorry guys, they don't make the games for you. You're just the subset of people that get so obsessed with them. It generally wonders me if you've ever smelled a female. And there's nothing wrong with that, because, you know, females, some people don't like females, some people like men. But I don't know, that guide is going to be an interesting one, based purely on, is it going to be filled with hate, or is it going to be filled with people that actually want to use it and enjoy it? Because I think it's going to get more hate than it's going to get the other, and I think that's a big shame. But luckily enough, I'm quite good when it comes to people leaving shit on my channel, so they better get ready for a fucking backlash. So thank you for watching guys, and you take care now.